The tension was thick before the cameras even rolled. On paper, the panel was meant to explore the state of civil liberties in America, featuring Megyn Kelly and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, but viewers quickly realized this wasn't just a discussion, it was a collision course. As Kelly opened with her usual sharp rhetoric about leftist agendas eroding justice, Crockett sat silently, hands folded, her expression unreadable. But once the moderator turned to her, Crockett launched into an opening so powerful, so surgically precise, that the audience froze. "I'm not here for sound bites," she began. "I'm here because people's lives are on the line while we debate in studios." Megyn Kelly smirked and quickly interrupted. "Jasmine, I appreciate your passion, but let's be honest. Sure, proposals sound great in speeches, but they fall apart in real life." Without blinking, Crockett replied, "Megyn, the only thing falling apart is a system built to serve the few while criminalizing the rest. If that sounds like passion to you, maybe you've never had to live with the consequences of injustice." A ripple went through the crowd. Crockett wasn't playing defense. She was flipping the script, one sentence at a time, her tone calm. Yet unrelenting, Kelly fired back with statistics, she said, showed rising crime in cities with progressive prosecutors. Crockett, anticipating the move, calmly cited Department of Justice data. "You're pulling partial numbers from partisan outlets. Let's be real, correlation isn't causation. You don't get to ignore poverty, housing, and education while blaming everything on a DA trying to fix the pipeline to prison." The audience leaned forward. Crockett's words weren't just rebuttals. They were indictments, each one backed by data, casework, and lived experience. Kelly tried to speak, but it was clear the rhythm of the debate was now in Crockett's control. Trying another angle, Kelly accused Crockett of catering to woke narratives instead of prioritizing safety. Crockett raised an eyebrow. "Safety? You mean like how safe Breonna Taylor was in her bed? Or how safe George Floyd was under a knee? Talk about law and order? Well, I talk about whose lives get ordered into graves while the law looks away." The moderator attempted to step in, but the audience broke into spontaneous applause. Crockett didn't flinch. She knew her words were heavy, but the moment demanded weight. She wasn't arguing for likes. She was confronting a legacy of silencing Kelly. Then attempted a personal dig, saying, "You seem more interested in headlines than hard policy." Crockett smiled. "Funny. I've written legislation while others wrote books about themselves. My job isn't to win airtime. It's to keep promises. One of those promises is making sure we don't use TV time to spread misinformation to millions." It wasn't just a burn it was a masterclass in reclaiming power. The live audience sat in stunned silence before another burst of applause filled the studio. Crockett's demeanor remained steady, grounded. She was here for the people, not the performance. Kelly tried to bring the debate back to objectivity, implying Crockett's views were clouded by emotion. But Crockett wasn't having it. "You say emotion like it's a flaw. I say it's... What happens when you're fighting for people who never get a seat at this table? My constituents don't have time for detached debates. They need results." That one line, clipped and shared online, went viral within minutes. Even those unfamiliar with Crockett were now quoting her. Her presence wasn't just felt, it was reverberating across digital platforms. From grassroots activists to national commentators. In a final attempt to undermine Crockett, Kelly leaned into the classic Law and Order script. "Are you suggesting we go soft on crime?" she asked. Crockett looked her dead in the eye. "No, I'm suggesting we stop being hard on the wrong people. Crime doesn't grow in a vacuum. It grows where communities are neglected, where people are over-policed and underprotected. Reform isn't soft, it's smart." The audience erupted again. Even the moderator, typically neutral, looked visibly impressed. Crockett wasn't. Dismantling arguments, she was dismantling decades of narrative conditioning. Kelly, visibly rattled, began speaking over Crockett, accusing her of stoking division. Crockett's reply was immediate. "Division existed long before I named it a deed. I didn't draw these lines. I just refused to ignore them." The moment was electric. Crockett had just flipped the accusation, exposing how silence in the face of inequality isn't neutrality, it's complicity. As Kelly stumbled through a half-hearted pivot, Crockett's point landed like a gavel. The audience knew it. Twitter knew it. Even Kelly seemed to realize she was no longer steering this ship. The moderator asked for final thoughts. Kelly gave a rushed summary filled with buzzwords, balance, facts, safety, but her tone lacked conviction. Crockett, on the other hand, delivered a closing that was pure conviction. We cannot keep solving symptoms while ignoring the source. Real justice isn't comfortable, it's corrective. And that correction starts when we stop letting privilege masquerade as expertise. The studio fell silent, not out of shock, but because nothing more needed to be said. Crockett had just delivered a closing argument for a generation. After the debate ended, cameras captured audience members standing and applauding Crockett as she exited the stage. Her team didn't bask in the attention they quietly gathered their materials and moved out with the same professionalism she had displayed throughout. Meanwhile, Kelly lingered behind, clearly unsettled. The energy of the room was different. Now, people weren't looking at the panel, they were looking at the future. It was wearing a blue blazer and walking with purpose. Social media exploded. Hashtags like Crockett Dominates, Justice with Facts, and Jasmine Unfiltered began trending. Influencers, policy analysts, and celebrities reposted her quotes. A snippet of her silence as a neutrality line was turned into a TikTok audio track within hours. Even typically apolitical pages shared her responses as examples of how to debate with both intellect and heart. Crockett had gone viral, but not because of theatrics. She went viral because the truth finally had a mic, and it was speaking clearly. Conservative outlets tried damage control, framing Crockett as angry and overly aggressive, but the response was swift. Civil rights groups, educators, and even some of Kelly's former colleagues condemned the framing as racially biased. Why? Is assertiveness a flaw only when a black woman displays it? The public wasn't fooled. They saw the difference between aggression and assertion, and they knew exactly which one Crockett embodied. The following day, Crockett was back to work. When asked about the debate by reporters, she simply replied, "I said what needed to be said now. I've got bills to pass." It wasn't indifference, it was focus. She refused to let a viral moment distract from the mission. Her ability to balance visibility with grounded activism became a blueprint for emerging leaders. For every moment of media fire, there was a mountain of policy work behind it. Educators began incorporating her debate into classroom discussions. "This is how you debate without dehumanizing," one civics teacher told students. University forums invited her to speak, not just about the content of the debate, but the strategy behind holding one's ground under fire. Crockett accepted selectively, always linking each appearance to a policy cause. "Platform means nothing without purpose," she told one packed auditorium. The message resonated. She was becoming not just a politician, but a symbol. Megyn Kelly, notably, did not issue an apology. Instead, she gave a brief interview downplaying the exchange. "It was a heated discussion, that's all," she said. But the public saw through the spin. The optics were clear. Kelly had underestimated her. Opponent Ann Crockett had responded not with personal attacks, but with evidence, passion, and unshakable calm. It was the kind of exposure no editing could fix. In an ironic twist, even conservative commentators began to concede Crockett's dominance. One pundit tweeted, "I don't agree with her politics, but damn, she held that debate like a courtroom." Closing, respect. It was a rare cross-aisle moment of acknowledgement. Crockett didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her silence said more than a victory lap ever could. The message was clear. When you come prepared, you don't have to perform, you just win. Her supporters launched new campaigns using her quotes to raise funds for justice initiatives. Community organizations adopted her lines for posters, t-shirts, and banners. But Crockett refused to monetize the moment. "Use it to teach, not to sell," she told her team. Her discipline was as sharp as her wit, or others might have. Cashed in on virality, she reinvested in visibility for causes that often go unseen. Within weeks, Crockett's legislation gained new co-sponsors. She led a bipartisan task force on bail reform and expanded protections for public defenders. Her staff noted an increase in youth volunteers inspired by the debate. "They want to learn policy now, not just post quotes," one staffer said. Crockett had lit a fire, but not just for herself. She'd sparked an entire civic awakening among those who'd grown tired of empty punditry. Months later, the debate was still referenced in podcasts, essays, and op-eds. It had become a benchmark not because of volume, but because of value. Jasmine Crockett didn't win by outshouting anyone. She won by outthinking, outworking, and outlasting. She turned a studio segment into a public seminar on how to combine lived experience with legislative clarity. It wasn't just a clapback, it was a roadmap. And so, Jasmine Crockett walked.